We have some always announcements as usual. So how about I just start a little early? Welcome. Wonderful to see you. Actually, I'll maybe prop open the door here in case we get 30 more people showing up. At least.
I don't know why it's not on.
That's the spare chair room. It's funny to see everyone. Uh, I love, this topic. I love getting out in winter. If anyone is interested, I'm going to be at the Liberty Loop on Oil City Road tomorrow at 4. I'm going to take a little stroll. I think we can make it all around the square and come back. Um, oh, well, great to see you again. And do the loop by around like 5:15. Just as it's starting to get dark, that would be a good time to look for short-eared owls, which are out and about. We'll talk about today. So it's just great to go out. So, we'd love to see it if anyone was interested. I'm sorry, I'm just going to mute a few.
We biked past.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so there's always things going on, and if this is something that's up your alley, there are organizations in our area that just have great community members who are dedicated to this. There are presentations, there are hikes. So there's the Orange County Audubon Society, which I've promoted before. I'm with them as I give the hike. There's the Bashicle Area Association. The Bashicle is just a wonderful area. We're really only, like, it's been so cold. I'm going to be there this weekend. But as I'll see, like, this is around the time when the eagles, if they're still in the area, they're going to start fixing up their nest, because sometime in the next month, fix up the nest because eggs are going to be laid. And so we're already thinking of the spring. But then there's other organizations as well. We have representative, or like, I apologize. Are you official leader? Okay, by all means, introduce the Mariners Club.
Yes.
I'll fill you in a second, people. For those of you at home, I know that very often you can't hear conversations. Oh, great. That's great. So we had Joyce Depew talking about the Mearns Birding Club. They do a lot of great hikes, et cetera, and they're really good, with their, identification. And so if anyone in future talks is here in person and you'd like to pick up one of their flyers, or feel free to look them up online. And so that's also then one of the joys. It's great to go out and see birds, but it's also just great to be among people who share your interest. And you never, everyone's got a story, like, at my bird feeder, I saw this. When I was on vacation, I saw that. So yeah, so we hope we can see you at some of these events. So Dorothy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, except that if we don't get 7 inches of snow,
Mm-hmm.
we will have the exception of the Northeast Watercolor Society and the Solo Show we have galleries for probably a total of about 120. It's really important show. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy. So I always start this talk with just the thing I'm surprised it took me decades of my life to realize. I just figured winter sucks. Like, I'm just going to wait till it get warm, and then I'll go out looking for birds again. And upon reflection, I missed so much. All right, because not only is there a lot you can see in winter, there's a lot you can only see in winter. All right, so for example, here's a short-eared owl. And if you said, "Ooh, I'd love to see that, but it's cold. Why don't I wait till it's warmer weather?" Well, they're gone. They're up north by that point. Here is a rough-legged hawk. Beautiful hawks, about the size of red tails. This is the time to see them. If you don't see them in winter, you're not going to. And as I go through this talk, there's a whole lot of examples of that, because birds have different breeding sites. So a lot of the birds we're used to in summer, like the warblers and the Baltimore orioles, this is their breeding ground. And right now they're wintering in like Georgia or Columbia or somewhere south of us. But there are a lot of other birds that their breeding ground is Canada, all right, or the Arctic or Alaska, and we're their wintering grounds. We are Florida to them. And so if you're not out and about now, you're not going to see these birds. So the thing that always, and I'm sure you're with me, just I don't like walking in the cold and when my hands get cold. And then once again, then I got angry with myself. I'm like, but you ski. Like when you ski, you wear layers, you wear the right stuff, you get hand warmers if it's that cold. If it's that cold, you just have then a face mask and just it's going to be cold and you dress appropriately. And then I would, go out birding and like, oh, it's too cold. And I'm just, well, you're dressed horribly, and someone had a saying that I like. It's like there's no such thing as bad weather, but just bad clothing choices. And so anyway, maybe if that so does a seed where if you like to get out, this is still a really good season to do that. And so there's a lot of great things to see, which I'd like to run through. But I love birds, but I love everything else as well. And so this series this spring is meant to cover a lot about the birds, but also, to cover all of these other groups. So just a couple of things to start. Trees may not seem so interesting in winter. So many of them have lost their leaves. Obviously, there are rhododendrons, but there's the bark. And just a couple of thoughts on bark.
And I'd like to
Maybe this
listen
time,
to
like you
it.
notice, how different all of these are, and then you can recognize, oh, well, you're like, that river birch stands out. And I can distinguish that from the black birch, from the dogwoods. And forgive me if anyone would like to say anything, you are more than welcome. But otherwise, I might just
Okay, and I am doing this.
put a few people on mute. Okay. Very
How do you change the name so it says Addison? No, don't.
okay. One of the things you might not know is a lot of trees, they have thin and sometimes greenish bark because they're still doing photosynthesis. Yeah, they drop their leaves for a couple of reasons. One, if you've got these leaves in winter, you're going to lose a lot of water. And you say, no, you won't. There's snow all over the ground, but it's frozen. So like in deserts, it's really hard for plants to get water and they have to find ways to conserve. But in our area, winter's the same way. All right, there could be, a foot of snow on the ground. That does not mean it's available water for the leaves. And so if you've got these big leaves, you're just losing water when water is scarce because it's frozen. So that's a problem. And also now if there's a big snowstorm, all these leaves are going to create this weight that's going to break the branches, et cetera. So there are a lot of reasons to drop your leaves. But maybe you don't want to stop photosynthesis. So if you notice, there actually are a few trees which still have thin greenish grayish bark. So here is a striped maple, green bark, it's doing photosynthesis. The one that you just saw was an aspen, it's doing photosynthesis. And so just because the leaves are down doesn't mean the plants are done. All right, so they might still be doing photosynthesis. And like I said, it's a time to notice bark. And you start saying, well, there's bark that peels, there's bark with crevices, and there's pluses and minuses. The thick bark with crevices, that provides insulation for the delicate inner bark, but then it also gives places for bugs to hide. So you're going to have more bugs if you've got thick bark with crevices. One of the interesting things is if you ask why, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in there. Why do these guys have such white bark? Well, here's the funny thing. Yes, it's cold in winter, but there is sunlight. And especially when the leaves are down, if you're one of the few things standing, you could warm up rather quickly. And that's actually a problem because the tender living bark where the sugar is transported, if you look at a tree trunk, most of it is dead cells where just they're dead, they're hollow, water goes up and down. But just inside the bark, that's where the living cells are, which are transporting sugar up and down. And that's what, the tree wants to protect. And if you're like, say by the Bashkill, if you hike the trails, I know like there's stretches of like a lot of gray birch, white birch is north of us. Well, it wants to be gray and white to reflect sunlight because otherwise it heats up too fast. And all of a sudden there's no leaves. So you get all the sun, you get warm, 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 the sun goes down and then the temperature drops. That would actually be traumatic for the plant to warm up and then to go so cold so quickly. So it's got this white bark to reflect the light. So anyway, it's just some thoughts. Bark becomes more noticeable here. And there's still other things performing photosynthesis. All right, so yeah, like it looks like, everything's going to be in hiatus. But if you look closely, wait a minute, I see green. Yeah, because you still have green algae. They're still doing photosynthesis. That's important because I'm going to mention the oxygen that other things are using to breathe. So photosynthesis means they're producing oxygen. This is a pond which is covered with ice. Now, once it gets covered with snow, obviously it's dark underneath. But if it's just ice, light still gets through that. So even though the pond is completely frozen, the algae are still doing photosynthesis, still producing oxygen, which we'll get to the ones using it in just a second. All right. And so the aquatic ecosystems are still doing their thing. So there's still light getting in there. You can still have moss at the base of trees, on rocks, etc. Moss produces chemicals which reduce freezing. All right. And so, you know, they might be, just mute a little bit more. Okay. And so winter's still a time that, you know, there's the producers making sugar, producing oxygen, et cetera. It can even get through snow. And if you know where to go, like there are a couple trails I know out near me, where all of a sudden you realize, you know, a lot of the leaves dropped in autumn, but things like rhododendrons and the mountain laurel, like they didn't. And you can go to areas which are just, you are surrounded by green. All right. Now, rhododendron can drop some. Welcome, welcome. Feel free to jump in. You can see some of the leaves are yellowing from the rhododendron. They will fall. All right. But they will keep their leaves in winter. So if you go on certain trails, you can be surrounded by green leaves. Now, not only do you like that, but obviously a lot of the animals do, where they can seek shelter from the cold winter wind. One of the things, birds I don't see much anymore are ruffed grouse. We're worried about them. Their numbers are declining. But if you ever go to like a rhododendron bush, like keep a lookout, because all of a sudden this ruffed grouse makes a lot of noise as it takes off. They're hiding in those areas. So, you know, there are still leaves. There are still habitat for all of these different ecosystems. And even if you were to find like a little piece where the ice was broken or whatever, so here there's ice on the water, you can kind of see it there. But if you went under the water, look at all the algae, and then you could scoop it up and you would see little aquatic invertebrates, not the same diversity as you would get in summer, but they're there. All right, so there's water bugs. All right, so there's a little Dobson fly larva. You got all of these little guys, and those algae producing the oxygen, obviously this is good for them. So there's algae that they can feed on. There's oxygen that they can breathe. And then the fish can take advantage of these. And so, you know, life doesn't stop in winter. It's still there. You just maybe have to look a little bit harder for it. Now, just a couple quick, yeah, I do have I had more songs. I'm sorry. I thought I only had one song. No, I had more. We'll play one a little bit. Where are the frogs? Well, they're there because frogs can live more than 1 year. All right. So spring peepers and wood frogs can live 3 years. Tree frogs and pickerel frogs can live 5 years. Yet the bullfrogs, we're going up to 10 years. So there are frogs here. All right. But just where? All right. Well, here there are certainly predators out looking for them. Like there's like raccoons and all of these things here you see there. So the frogs are there. The predators know that. They are will mostly stay underwater. So frogs have a number of strategies to get through winter. So let me just quickly mention some of those. They don't hibernate. Technically, hibernation is something that, say, a mammal chooses to do with hormones, where you say, aha, I'm going to, with my hormones, change my metabolism and do that. So we would call that hibernation. If you just get cold and have a way to deal with it, we use a different word called brumation. So reptiles and amphibians, they do brumation, technically a little different from hibernation. They're not controlling any. But they're underwater, all right? And they can just be at the bottom of the lake and they breathe through their skin. All right, so yes, they have lungs, all right, but they can also then breathe through their skin. So there's oxygen in the water. The algae are producing more. So they just suck it in and there they are. They're under the ice, but they're alive. They're kicking. All right. And most of the frogs will be doing that. Pickerel frogs don't do well in lakes. They need a little bit more oxygen than a lake can provide. So you're probably going to find them at the bottom of streams at this time of year. So they would probably like that just because they need a little more oxygen. Toads can just kind of dig themselves deep into holes and just sit in the ground and wait out the winter, because the ground freezes, but only to a certain point. And if you can get underneath that, you just kind of sit quiet and wait for the temperatures to get warmer. And I'm sure you're thinking, like, oh, that must be horrible. Like, what if you would die? Well, obviously, animals can die. But let's just take the wood frogs for a second. They might just go under some leaves, and then it freezes, and you're thinking, but like, don't like they freeze solid? They're full of liquid. I mean, don't the liquids freeze? And the answer is yes, and they survive. Now, you can read this. Everyone does it. I've never done it. I don't never found the heart, but you can, whatever. If you take a wood frog, you can put it in the freezer and freeze it solid, and then take it out, and it'll warm up and then hop away. They are the only frog that you can find north of the Arctic Circle. So in winter, they don't really do anything special. They just go underneath some leaves and say, I'm just going to freeze. All right. And they have special proteins in their blood, kind of act like antifreeze. They do that. Tree frogs also do that, just not as well. So spring peepers, they freeze solid. Tree frogs, they just might be hanging out on a tree, a little crevice in a tree, crack in a tree. And yeah, it gets super cold in winter, and they get super cold, and some of their things freeze, but they are just adapted to that. So there are frogs still with us. Salamanders, similar, also undergoing brumation. All right. Some of them are in water, some of them are in land. This species can be either. It can just kind of do brumation in water. It can do brumation in the soil litter. This one's more complicated, the one that makes a red F, because it has a larval red F stage. It has the adult phase. So like the adult might be in water. The red F could be in land or on water. But the amphibians are still with us. So you look out at a frozen landscape, it seems like there's nothing there. They're there. All right. They're just hiding. Same thing as with snakes. Okay, snakes are often just going to like find a deep crevice, and to conserve body warmth, like there'll be places where they just crowd together. Lots of garter snakes, or just if you're cold, all right, just you're not picky about who you accept in your little group. You can find different species, like rattlesnakes and copperheads can then be with black rat snakes. Just a whole bunch of them, just conserving warmth. Like the more the merrier. That just keeps the group warmer. So mixed species are common. Turtles are doing this. All right. Now, some turtles will burrow, like box turtles. They'll just dig a deep burrow and hopefully go beneath the frost line. If it starts getting colder, they say, oh, uh-oh, and they have to dig down further. So, they have to do that. Most turtles, however, they just sit at the bottom of a pond. I've never done this, but if you're walking on ice and it's clear enough, every now and then you see like a snapping turtle underneath you or a painted turtle, and they just sit there, all right, because they're going to breathe through their skin. Now, I'm going to introduce a new term for you. It's a real term. You can look it up. So obviously these are reptiles. They have lungs, and you can't use lungs underwater, but they do a little breathing through their skin. A lot of fish do, amphibians do. In fact, a lot of the salamanders in our area don't even have lungs anymore. Their lungs aren't all that good, so they just said, the heck with it. They just do all their breathing through their skin. So that's the thing. There are a couple of animals, turtles would be one of them, that do one more other thing. They can perform cloacal respiration. What does that mean? They can breathe through their butts. So cloacas are something that fish, amphibians, and reptiles have. It's one common opening that mammals would then separate to be urinary, digestive, and reproductive tracts. Reptiles just have one. But then turtles will just open then their cloaca, and that's how oxygen is getting into their body. So those green algae producing oxygen and photosynthesis, the turtles at the bottom of the pond, they're appreciative of that because they're breathing using that. So there's all of these sorts of things. All right. If you're sad because you think that like none of what I've described would inspire any songs, we'll just do this one. I swear.
Brumation, frogs form of hibernation. Can't migrate south, they're no sprinter. This is how they overwinter.
Okay, there's more. But anyway, that's just a taste. Okay. So there's these, and then there's the birds. So what do birds do in winter? Do birds migrate? Well, I'll just be honest, we would like, like maybe 40 minutes from now to call it quits. This topic alone could take 40 minutes. Migration is not an all or nothing thing. It's not like this bird migrates, it doesn't. Some are. Some birds, like all of them will migrate. Some no, like where they breed and where they make nests, you can find them in winter there. So some birds don't migrate, some birds do. Lots of birds are in the middle and are called partial migrants. So lots of the birds in our area are partial migrants. So if you go out birding and you're saying, what could I expect to see? What am I looking at? This then complicates it a little bit. It's not this, you're definitely going to see this, etc. So let me just kind of start walking you through all of these. So we can get to all of these individual. Let's just, we'll at the end start giving individual stories. Bald eagles. All right, here's a bald eagle on the Bashik Hill. I saw bald eagles on the Bashik Hill this spring. Is it the same eagle? Maybe. So that's an option. They could say, I like this. This is my territory. I found, fish here. I raised a family at that nest. I'm going to defend it over winter, and I'm going to be here the minute the weather starts getting, warmer, end of February, March. I'm going to stay here over winter. Possible. Also possible, no. Our eagles, they went south to Virginia, and Maine's eagles came here. All right. So even if I see eagles here all year round, doesn't necessarily mean you're seeing the same eagles all year round. Our eagles could go south, Canada's eagles could go south to us. So that would be called partial migration. What we see with a lot of species is that if you ask, do they migrate? Let me just pause for you. The ones down south, no, like in South Carolina. If they had a territory where they had a nest, no, they'll stay the winter there. They'll stay in their breeding grounds. They do not migrate. If you go to like Massachusetts or Ontario, oh yeah, they're not going to stay there all winter. They migrate. But in the middle, it could go either way. All right, so maybe they do. And now here's all these variables. A warmer winter, maybe they stay. A colder winter, they go. All right, maybe there's differences. Maybe the male that defended the territory says, I'm going to stay. The females and the juveniles go. So if you ask the question, is it a migratory bird? It's not a yes or a no. All right, there's all of these things that can vary. Apparently, they've studied birds from all over the world. There are examples where there are genes involved. So in a population, just like some of us have black hair, some of us have brown hair, some of us have red hair, some birds are more likely to migrate genetically. And this one, just based on its genes, this one migrates while another member of its species doesn't. But then there are ones where like, I didn't migrate last year, but I will this year. So like because it migrates one year doesn't mean it needs to the next. So then there's all of these variations which we see. Here once again, short-eared owls, which we can get back to. This is the time to see them. All right. So we find them in this area, the rough-legged hawk. This is the time to see them. Black ducks, maybe. I was seeing black ducks through December. So they could stay here or they could go south. So once again, there's this overlap where they breed up here, they winter down there. And we, for a lot of bird species, we're just at the edge of where they might be in winter. All right. And so, you don't expect to see black ducks. You don't expect to see all of these things, but you could. So this came up. Okay. I'm talking about bluebirds. Why don't I do this? Right, so, there we go. I was at an Audubon sanctuary last week, and surprised me, I saw this. Now, so bluebirds. Do bluebirds stay here all winter? And the question, once again, perfect example of a partial migrant. Southern populations of bluebirds do not migrate. Northern populations all do. In our area, could go either way. You could see bluebirds all winter long, all right, but maybe you won't. So I've seen bluebirds a couple of places. So they're here in Orange County, maybe not as many as we once had. Who are they? Are they our summer bluebirds or are they Canada's bluebirds? Not quite sure. Okay. Now, the reason this bothers me, as you'll see in a second, is this is a birdhouse. I want to give a shout out to. There was a Girl Scout troop that did a project to help the Audubon Society, gave us a bunch of birdhouses. So we put them up at this sanctuary in Stony Creek. And here's a male bluebird by the birdhouse, and then here's then the female is there as well. So they're next to the bluebird house. And this is a little earlier than I was expecting. So we'll get to that. When do birds start thinking about spring and mating? Well, a lot of them already have. All right, so a lot of the birds were actually like pairing up in December. That's why if you notice, we can get to this in a little bit. If you notice, oh, the late summer, you look at the ducks and, ducks are pretty, don't get me wrong, but they weren't as pretty. I mean, there's no bright green heads. The wood ducks, they weren't as fan. Like just ducks were a little disappointing because they weren't breeding. And if you're not going to breed, and just forgive me, just from a male's point of view, if the females aren't interested, all right, well, then why are you going to be bright colors which attract, the predators? Like you should just kind of hide during that time. And now only, put on your showy feathers when females get interested. All right, so we have a chat just checking. Oh, bluebird on the feeder just last week. Okay. So I apologize. A question, don't some frogs freeze in winter? So let me just answer them. We'll go back to these guys with kinglets, golden crown kinglets. You'll see them in winter. This is the best time to see them. If you asked, don't some of them freeze in winter? Yeah, they do. All right, they're tiny birds, smaller than sparrows, and it's really hard to have a really high metabolism in freezing cold weather if you're small. That's hard. So do a lot of them die? Yeah, which is maybe why they have two broods a summer. They lay two bunch of eggs and they lay a lot of eggs. Maybe because they aren't going to make it. So your question, don't some frogs freeze in winter? Just because a lot of them survive doesn't mean that some don't die. And I'll get to that again, like Carolina wrens. Just another example. We are just at the edge of where you might see them in winter. All right. They're a warmer bird. But you could see them here. But if the winter turned really cold, what does that mean? Probably means our Carolina wrens are going to die. All right, it happens. Like there'll be a warm winter. Ooh, the Carolina wrens, they spread a little farther north. It's a cold winter. Ooh, a lot of them hit it. So not to be insensitive, but your question, don't some of them die? Yeah, like winter does kill animals. If this box turtle doesn't dig deep enough and it gets super cold and the frost line goes deeper than it thought, the box turtle could freeze and die. Here's the female bluebird. Notice not quite as bright, a little more gray on the head. But in any case, they were by a nest box, which to me suggests at least the possibility they're checking it out. And so if this is a little aside, but if you have bluebird boxes near your house, and some of these here, we have thanks to Bob's generosity and his donations. One thing you might want to consider every year is to clean them out, and you'll see why. Because in some places, there's only a little bit of material, but in other places they can be full. So obviously, a bluebird house which is full to the brim, just if you're going to try to attract a new family for the following year, just cleaning out the stuff from last week. Now, some of that is nesting material. I mean, that could be bluebirds, but it could be tree swallows and wrens, etc. But there's another option. Mice love bluebird houses. So seriously, if you have bluebird houses, one of the things, it's on my to-do list in February's is you just go and you got to clean the mice out. And I never want to do it too early because I'm always afraid that they come back and fill up the bluebird house again. So when the bluebirds come back, but it was the last week of January, I saw a pair of bluebirds at a bluebird house. And I'm thinking, I was going to wait till mid-February to do this, but it was raining last Friday, but I was thinking, no, I think I gotta go out and get the these out. So I'll get back to birds, but just a quick mention. All right, deer mice, I'm sure a lot of us don't give too much thought to them. They are North America's most common mammal. All right, so shout out to them for that. And I'm going to show a couple of other things of wildlife that you might see in winter that you kind of get a kick out of. Like we at the trail cameras at our sanctuary in Goshen, we've been getting bobcat, we've been getting red foxes, we've been getting mink. There's all of these hawks. There's the short-eared owls, the rough, and so I could go through this long list. Who are they eating? Well, they're eating the voles and they're eating these. So once again, maybe these aren't your thing, and that's okay. But maybe you love the barred owls or the short-eared owls, or you love the Cooper's hawks, or you love, they mostly go after birds, but they can go after rodents too. So, once again, just we have to be happy that they're here in winter. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing some of those predatory, those predatory birds. Okay. So I'm sorry, that was a little bit of a side. All right, but getting back to then partial um, migration. So you go out and you might be surprised, because this winter's a little warmer, and just last year, 2024, was the warmest year on record. Now, because we'll get into dinosaurs by the end of our lecture series in this class, it is not as warm as it was in the dinosaur age. I'm not saying like this is the warmest planet Earth has ever gotten, but it is the warmest since we've been around. All right, so it's getting warmer. Last year was the warmest year on record. 2023, the year before that, was the record holder before that. So winters are getting warmer, and you can see that. Mockingbirds didn't really spend their winters here as much, but mockingbirds are pretty common to see here. Black vultures, and I'm sure a lot of the birders know, you were around, 15, 20 years ago, you saw a black vulture, that was something special. All right. They're just from farther south. But it got warmer, and black vultures are everywhere now. And then they stay the winters. Carolina wren ranges have spread. So you never know who you're going to see. The climate is changing. Bird ranges are changing. Okay. These common mergansers are with us all winter, but obviously open water is needed. So your comment earlier was great. At a certain point, if it gets cold enough, you might be looking at the Hudson or the Delaware, just because the lakes freeze. You still could probably find streams here and there, but like if you need fish to feed on, the common mergansers here. But notice, like it's winter, but notice the breeding coloration of the males, and they were all chasing each other. They're already pairing up. It is true that birds are going to, including the ducks, are going to migrate here, and then they're going to do stuff. But a lot of the birds which come back to Orange County without a partner, they won't partner. All right. So a lot of them, they started in December. All right. And, right now they're in the Carolinas or whatever. And if they find a partner, like the female will come back to the place where she wants to lay eggs. The male will follow her. And a lot of the birds that come back without a mate won't mate this year. So birds are already thinking of spring and have been since December. On the swans, we haven't seen the swans because it's just been too darn cold. But the cygnets from last year, they can stay with their parents up through spring of this year. Now, just if there's any people who are good at therapy for swans, you're going to see where your window is going to be in a second. So the swans are good parents, and when we start talking like in spring about the migration, this does get tricky because I'm sure a lot of you, have personal feelings about relationships and what's, like proper behavior in relationships, et cetera, and good for you. But once we start talking about, well, these birds do it this way and these birds do it this way, like it's easy to be a little judgy, like I don't parent like that or whatever. So, and that's fair. But in general, the swans and the geese, they take care of their young, and both parents do. Ducks in general, the males are gone by the time the eggs are almost ready to hatch, and they will pair up with new partners come spring. So ducks are what are called seasonally monogamous. They are faithful. We could talk about ducks and being faithful in the spring lecture. They are faithful to one partner for a season, but then they never see each other again, and then they will pair up again. Whereas a lot of the swans and geese are mating for life. So you can actually see family units with the snow geese, the swans, the Canada geese, where they're hanging out with the young that they had this year. But like in the case of the snow geese, there will come a point in Marchish where all of a sudden these parents that the cygnets have known, that have cared for the cygnets since the day they were hatched, all of a sudden are like, you get out of here, because the parents are already thinking of the next set of eggs. And so I'm sure that the young need therapy because their loving parents all of a sudden are like, you get out of here, you have no place here. So I'm sure there's stories there. All right. So I just have all of these. So let me just hit some more. There's so many winter stories to tell. We're missing a lot of the bug-eating birds, but not all of them. Like I mentioned, the golden crowned kinglets, they're so small, they don't migrate far. Well, like traveling hundreds of miles, you're that small, that's just not their thing. But they eat bugs mostly. All right, I'll get to birds often have more varied diets in winter, but the kinglets, if you look at their beaks, they're not good at like, eating seeds and things like that. And so there are still bugs. Like if you were to go into the crevices of bark, not as many, but you could still find them. There's still leaf litter where if went around, you could still find some. So there's still bugs. So there are still some bug eating birds around us, but most of them have gone south and said, no, no, we'll just go to Virginia and find bugs there. But there are bugs here, and the woodpeckers know where to find them. All right, because they're they can be in rotting wood. And woodpeckers, once again, just the shout out to woodpeckers. I can't repeatedly slam my skull into something hard without a concussion. They not only do it, they make a hole. I mean, that's pretty, impressive. But plus now you made a hole, so what? Like if I made a hole, I mean, there's still bugs in there. I'm not necessarily getting them, but woodpeckers and hummingbirds, which aren't closely related, both have something similar about them. So they got a long beak, and obviously their tongue is as long as their beak. But for both of them, the tongue doesn't end there. It actually goes up behind their head, around their head, to their eye. So therefore, when they extend their tongue, when this goes all the way out, it actually protrudes far past the tip of their bill. So they make a hole in the wood, but then they can shoot out their tongue there, and their tongue often has like thick mucus on it and like sticky barbs, so like they can stab little beetle larvae and the like. Hummingbirds can do the same. Plus, they got all the other adaptations. So they got their like feet are special in most woodpeckers where they curl one of the toes around to better hold on to vertical surfaces. They got stiff tail feathers so they can sit against the tree. So you got all those things. You can stay here and eat bugs. All right. So most of the bug eating birds are gone, but we can still find the woodpeckers, the pileatids, the downies, and the haries, etc. Now, you can still see flickers. When we did our Christmas bird count, I saw northern flicker, but they are woodpeckers, but they do most of their feeding on the ground. They like ants. They eat ants like crazy, and they do most of their feeding on the ground. So even though they're woodpeckers, they're more likely to migrate. Yellowed belly sapsuckers, they're woodpeckers, but they like, to get the sugary sap, which in winter isn't running. All right, so they're woodpeckers, but they might migrate. So when I said, we're going to see our woodpeckers, that's kind of true. But if you learn anything, I'm sure many of you learn this for your birding, certainly from my thing. You're never going to say, I am sure of birds are going to act like this or whatever. There's general rules which are generally true, but then we can find exceptions to a lot. One of the great joys, and hopefully we'll be lucky tomorrow night. The last about a week ago, I was at Liberty Loop, and you can see short-eared owls there. And there are days, I'll tell you an embarrassing story. There are days where, you still have your woodpecker that likes to put, oh yeah, I love woodpeckers, but I live in a wooden house. And so, yeah, I share, I share how torn you are. Yeah, that's an issue. But short-eared owls are great. And just let me describe the Liberty Loop if you don't know it. If you were to go to Slate Hill and then just going south, you would go to Westtown and you would go to Unionville. And that's right at the Jersey border. And if you right at the Jersey border on Oil City Road, I think it's also called County Line Road. There's like there in the Bashakill, there's like roads that have two names. And I hate that because people know it by one name, not the other. But if you then go out and you go like 2.5 miles or so, there's a place where the Appalachian Trail crosses, and there's a two great places to hike. There's the Winding Waters Trail and the Liberty Loop Trail, but it's a marsh, and it's especially in winter, the diversity of birds you see there in Orange County is about as good as you're going to get. The Shawangunk grassland is also very good, but just wonderful, wonderful. And because it's marsh and it's wet, there's voles everywhere. You'll see them. All right, there's a little vole. I saw that there. So you see rodents, but now also you can see the things that hunt the rodents. You can see the harrier hawks during the day. And short-eared owls are one of the species of owls that can come out at dusk. Some owls don't. They just, it's really dark when they come out. But then there's a bunch that, no, they can come out at dusk. And when they feel like it, and owls are really, like if you're trying to pin down when they do, it's like they really do things when they feel like it. So they're harder to pin down. They can come out at dusk, and we can still get good views of them. So last year, Actually, some of you were there. So anyway, I was going to do a little hike at the Liberty Loop like I am tomorrow. And I went out a couple days early just to kind of, see what was there. Oh, and the short-haired owls, they're playing with each other like multiple owls in the frame at the same time. They're fighting with the harriers. They're, flying by and like posing for the camera as they go. And I'm like, oh, everyone is going to so love the hike. This is going to be such a great thing. And then 2 days later, it was cold and rainy, and some of you remember, and there were no owl. Like we barely saw the shadow of an owl, like right as it was getting really super dark. So once again, owls, trouble. And I tell the story, I had trouble chewing 3 days later. And I'm like, what is this about? And what it was I spent the whole time walking the Liberty Loop because I'd build everybody up like, we're going to see owls. It's going to be so great. We saw nothing. And I think I was just gritting my teeth. I was like, where are these owls? Where are they owls? And I hurt myself. And so I'm like, yeah, I have to lead hikes differently. But anyway, so go now because they're only here in winter. All right. They go up to Canada once it gets warmer. And notice this is like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun's still out. All right. And they're just beautiful. So it's right around dusk where you say like, oh, there's harrier hawks everywhere. No, don't get me wrong. Harriers were beautiful. So you're like, I saw a harrier hawk. I saw a harrier hawk. And all of a sudden you're thinking, wait, no, head looks a little big. Maybe even I hear them making their sounds. That's not a harrier. That's a short-eared owl. So it's a real joy. And the Liberty Loop is great because there's just a little great place to watch right off the road. So you can just kind of pull your car in. I would recommend not trying to go weekends because we are not the only people who know this secret. It is a popular place to go. And so especially on weekends, where do you find parking? Yeah, so, but anyway. So here's a harrier hawk and a short-eared owl. So once again, there's that transition time where it's almost too late in the day for the harriers. They're at the end of the day. The short-ears are just starting. But you could actually see both of them, the harriers on the left with the white spot on his tail. But once again, this is the time to see them. Okay. Let me just kind of, there is a lot of fun stuff. So let me just kind of just kind of go through some things that you might see. Golden crown kinglets are here in the warmer weather. They can be, but they're tiny birds. They like conifer trees high up, and they never stop moving. So if you're a birder, if you're a photographer, like you're already angry with me because you hate them, right? Like the little birds that never stop moving. Yeah, some of you like, I don't have to say anymore. I could show you thousands of pictures of branches. That's the branch where a bird just was. And I'm sure a lot of you have the same thing, just like trying to take care of, look at that. It's a tiny little bird and it will never stop moving. But winter's the time you're most likely to see them. So they are here other months, but you're really likely to see them there. And once again, they have to act a little different because they're tiny little birds, and how to stay tiny and warm in February is a challenge. So they'll spend the nights huddled together, bunches of them. So that's another good way to see them because in one little patch, you're going to see bunches of them there. Okay. Is that the snow goose or snow geese? Oh, okay, yes, snow geese. This winter, there's a couple of birds I like to see in winter that I haven't yet. Snow geese would be one of them, white-crowned sparrows, another one. So once again, if you don't see them in winter, you're not going to see them because they're Canada's birds, all right? But this is their Florida. And so especially the Liberty Loop. So like, where are they going to lay their eggs? There, all right? Unless you're going on vacation there, you're not going to see them, come June, all right? But then this is their Florida. And here's one close up. And last year, if you were at the Liberty Loop, they're just a joy to watch because they fly in these big flocks and they've got the black and the white on their wings. And then they'll all change direction, together. And then you can see the shift in the color. Oh, just a joy. They aren't here every year, but I would say, a third of the years to half the years. But the past couple of years, they've been pretty reliable. I have yet to see them this year. So sometimes it's hard to see them, but there's just like thousands of them in the sky there. But right here at the Carmelite Sanctuary, a half a mile up the road, there was one winter where they decided to spend some time there. And didn't you mention that they went to the Davidge after that? Yeah, so I think it was the same year. If you go to Allentown, and you drive past the cornfields, there can just be huge numbers of them. Apparently, now there's concern about avian flu in some of the snow geese. So, lots of things going on. But once again, here's, a joy in winter. So, you're not seeing as many birds in winter, but nevertheless, you watch that, that's a real treat. And this is the time of the year to see it. Rough-legged hawks are a hawk I love to see, but it's going to be in winter only. Looks like a red tail, but look at that solid chest there. If you got to see their legs, the reason they're called rough-legged hawks is that they've got feathers on their legs. They hover. Not many birds do. All right, and so some falcons do, like a kestrel. If you just see a bird that's just standing still, all right, and it's small, you might say, "Oh, I think that's a kestrel," just because of the way it's flying. And this is the size of a red-tailed hawk, but it can hover. So once again, that might be a clue. There might be more birds around that you don't notice because a lot of times in winter, they're just not in their breeding finest. So goldfinches, like when you think of goldfinches, we're thinking the males looking so bright, right? The females, a little duller. I think I have a female in, yeah. So there's the female goldfinch. All right, she doesn't stick out as much as the bright male, but she's kind of more of an olive, etc. In winter, the juveniles and the males look like the females. So you may have seen goldfinches, you just didn't notice they weren't the bright gold. In the same way, like bluebirds, like the ones which were hatched this year, they're probably still like kind of a grayish almost. So you might have seen bluebirds and not noticed it. A lot of the reason for these coloration patterns is to impress, not only impress the females, but to show them how healthy you are. And I've mentioned this before, we can mention it again. Birds don't make yellow pigments. They don't make red pigments. They eat them. All right. And so when a bird becomes a bright yellow or a bright orange, Baltimore Oriole, what the males are telling the females is, see how healthy I am? Look at how much I've been eating. All right. Like, would I have found this much food if I wasn't healthy? And the females can rate the males and like, nah, not red enough for me. No, not orange enough for me. So, they're not the bright colors now for a couple of reasons. One, the food supply that, the fruits which would give them, and the plant material which would give them this coloration isn't around. But also that would make them stick out for predators. So they're going to wait for when the females would be receptive to then do a molt where they make new feathers that are going to be bright colored. So you could see bluebirds and goldfinches, but really maybe not notice because once again, they're a little more subdued in their coloration. The song that I had played earlier mentioned white-crowned sparrows. Now, you'll see how green it is here. That's because this was taken in Chicago. So in Chicago, you can find them here in warmer weather. Here, you're only going to see them in colder weather or migration. All right. So there are two sparrows which are easy to confuse. There's the white-throated sparrow, who will be with us all year round. All right, they have a white throat, nice little yellow dot here. There's a white-crowned sparrow with a pink bill. Okay, so they're only, your best chances to see them in winter. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not trying to, influence you in any way. When I go birding, sparrows aren't always the top of the list of what I'm looking for. And for a long time, I would like, oh, it's a sparrow. It's a little, what are the little brown jobbers? What are like, oh, LBJs? Like, I've heard a lot of people, little brown jobber, like, yeah, it's fine. But the song that I made, there was a day I went to the Liberty Loop and I didn't see anything except for sparrows. So I was like, well, I'm seeing sparrows. But second reason, I don't know my sparrows. So if I'm going to practice my skills on some identification, all right, I've been meaning to do sparrows, so why don't I just do this anyway? But then third is, there are some sparrows that you're only going to see during winter. All right, so white-crowned sparrows, winter is your best time to see them. Tree sparrows, best time to see them. Slate-colored juncos are sparrows. It's your best time to see them in winter. So if you were to go out, just look at the sparrows. Look at the white crown on the head. Because for a lot of birders, that's like if you were to list, like you might say like, ooh, cardinals are bright red and blue jays are, bright blue. But like for a birder to come home, it was nice to see the cardinal, it was nice to see a blue jay. Oh, but the white-crowned sparrow, that was special. All right, because they're hard to see. This is the time of the year. So, that just, even if what you're looking at are sparrows, nevertheless, that might be, what livens up the day for you. Here's just another example of that, the American tree sparrow, right? Doesn't stand out as much. Got a little black spot on its chest, little reddish head there. Also, something that makes it stick out is a bicolor bill. So you notice kind of dark up top, yellow on the bottom. But once again, this is their Florida. All right, they're not going to be here in the warmer months. So once again, if you're going out birding in winter, you may not see as much, but you will see different things, and this is your time of the year. So, a lot of birders keep lists. This year I saw this and this and this. Well, if you're not out in winter, you're going to miss your white-crowned sparrows, your tree sparrows, maybe your slate-colored juncos, your all of the other things I've mentioned as well. Okay. A couple other, random points as we go through. Another thing about birds in winter is the ones that are here, they can look different. All right. So starlings in winter don't have the iridescence that they do in other seasons, but they can also act differently. All right. Now, that often is in what they eat. And when I mentioned robins, I'll get back to that. But it could also then be in their behavior as well. So in summer, you don't see starlings doing this. You don't see starlings congregating just in hundreds, thousands of them. All right. In fact, so much that a word has been kind of coined, which will then largely apply just to them. Oh, okay. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing. Called murmuration. All right. So murmuration is a term which is referring to starlings. Now, there are plenty of reasons to not have starlings on the top of your list. They're an introduced species. They can be pests. Like if you're a farmer, probably mixed feelings. They eat a lot of bugs. You might like that. They might also eat a lot of seeds and stuff. You might not like that. They eat a lot of seeds of weed plants. So, they're pluses and minuses. I'm not going to try to get into that. They certainly have displaced many of our native birds. All right. So not fond of that. But just to see so many birds doing such a beautiful acrobatic, turn. Once again, in winter, this is your time to see that. So that may be something else you pick up where, I'm seeing birds that I used to, but they're doing different things like robins. Like somebody might be shocked, wait, robins are here in winter? Yeah, but they're doing different things. So in warmer months, they're on your lawn eating worms. They're not doing that now. So now they're going to be in trees where there's more cover from the cold wind, and now they're eating berries. All right. And so once again, the birds we're used to, but acting differently. So you may not see them because they're not in the same place where you looked at. Yes. Uh-huh.
Where the ice trail stops and the grass grows.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing them.
Well, that's great. And that's with and forgive me, I go skiing, I've been out hiking, I know it's been cold of late, so I'm not saying that it hasn't been. But also I'm old enough to remember it's not as cold as it used to get. I'm sure I remember we get a snowstorm end of November, December, and that was the last time I saw my lawn, in Middletown till middle of March. That was it. So an interesting thing, once again, we're watching climate change. I'm not saying it's not cold in winter, but all of these birds, where can they find food? There actually is exposed ground in February. It wasn't that way. So what does that mean for birds and their food? And this would be interesting to watch. We don't know. These are literally the warmest years that humans have seen. So how is this going to affect birds? We don't know. So the observations you make out in the wild, by all means, put them on eBird, join birding clubs and report them, because we don't know how, birds are going to react to all of the changing things. That's neat. Thanks for sharing. And I apologize. I mentioned bluebirds and I kept on going. Did our resident bluebird expert have anything you wanted to add?
Actually, I saw New Year's Eve, maybe 6 bluebirds at Liberty Loop. January 2nd, I actually saw my human over a dozen bluebirds in the front lawn.
Wow.
I've never seen that many.
Wow.
They've been gone.
And one of the things that once again, birds can act differently in winter. Like in summer, a dozen bluebirds in one place isn't what you're going to see because they're territorial. They're like, hey, you know, I'm the female. This is my nest box where I'm laying. I'm the male. I'm going to defend the eggs. So you're going to see them in pairs, and a dozen would not be what you would see. But in winter, bets are off, you know, and so things can. So that's another thing to maybe, you know, keep an eye out for, that the birds are acting a little differently. There are still fruits out. All right, and I'll just, there's a couple more examples. We could go on and on, but you know, I just want to introduce you to the plethora here. But when plants make fruits, you know, and here once again, I apologize. I'm going to say a few words about parenting, and I know we all have thoughts about parenting and what's good parenting versus not. So for a lot of plants, they say like, I love my kids. I would love them to be successful, but not here. All right. Go there, be successful here. Because if you're successful here, you grow, you're taking my water and my soil and my nutrients. Like, no, don't grow here, go there. And they want this so badly that they cover their plants, they cover their kids with carbohydrates. And they say, animals, please eat my kids. And then defecate them over there. Please get them far. Right. And that's just, you know, the way that they spread. And when plants do that, they do it in different ways. Some plants, they go to a lot of work to make really choice fruits, and like the dogwoods, like, and when birds are migrating, they go for the dogwoods first. But there's a lot of plants that don't put that much effort into it, like the sumacs don't. A lot of the invasive plants don't, like, you know, like autumn olive and the buckthorn doesn't. So there's what are called starvation fruits. The really good fruits, they are long gone. The birds migrating in autumn, they ate all of those. But there are still fruits around. They're not good fruits, all right? But when you're starving and when it's winter, you'll eat them. And some birds have special adaptations where, like, some birds like cedar waxwings, they can digest berries that other birds can't. All right. So there's still food here. All right. But what they eat may change. So, like, you look at a lot of these birds, like the sparrows, etc. In summer, they'll eat more bugs. But there aren't bugs now, so now they're eating more of the seeds, and probably, you know, the seeds on the ground. Some birds like turkeys can scrape through the snow and expose some dirt. Other ones you'll see a lot, like if juncos along the side of the road where they put salt, because now all of a sudden there's bare ground. Maybe they find some seeds, maybe they find some insects, etc. So birds might change their behavior. Birds can hang out with members of their own group, as we mentioned with the bluebirds, etc. But then they can hang out, you know, in big groups too. So there's a whole bunch of species just hanging out. But if you hang out in a group, you're sharing body warmth, you're blocking the wind. You're all looking for predators because you're in the middle of nowhere. All right, there's no leaves, there's no bushes. So predators, you know, looking around, they don't have much to eat, so they're looking for ducks. You know, all the hawks in this area. But now look at all the eyes that are looking for the predators. And if you all take off at the same time, you're likely to confuse the predators so that they have trouble finding you. Also, one other thing, the gulls, they one of their adaptations is they shunt blood away from their feet. All right, so that they send less blood to their feet, so that their feet get really close to freezing. But that way, the hot blood is staying more in their body's core, and they're losing less heat when they're standing on ice. So once again, just, you know, birds can behave just a little bit different here. Now, as I just wrap up, we could go on, but clearly lots of mammals are still around. You know, as we go, here's red fox. We were getting a fisher up at Goshen 2 years ago, not anymore. But we can see mink, we can see bobcat. Actually, I apologize, just... Yeah, these are red foxes. I'll find, yeah, okay, so this is from this past December going into January. But we were getting this great little bobcat right up here in Goshen, kept coming back. So that's great just because, you know, I love bobcats. But also if you're going to start talking about birds, etc., you know, they're out here. And someone mentioned the Canada geese. For a long time, there were no Canada geese at, you know, 6.5 Station up here. But if you look at this trail cam video, I mean, there's bobcats, there's gray foxes, there's all of these things that can now walk out to the middle. All right. And so maybe it's not just the availability of water. Maybe it's just, you know, if you're in the middle of the water, predators can't get to you without you sensing them first. And here would be exceptions to that. All right. Great blue herons are an example of the partial migrants. They're still around. All right. They might now be more on rivers, etc. But you can still see them in winter. Some things you might be more likely to see because Cooper's hawks in warmer weather are going to be farther away from you, like be more secluded. And here, all right, just because there's less to prey on, now those birds, are even more of their diet than they usually are. And so you might actually be more like, even though Cooper's hawks are always around, they might now just be in different places so that you're more likely to actually see them in the colder months. All right. Let me just do like 3 more and then sum up. So with the wrens, all right, so there's a bunch of species of wrens that we might see. A couple of them are long gone, all right? So the marsh wrens and the house wrens, they don't like the cold weather, they're gone. Carolina wrens, maybe a warmer winter, you're more likely to see them. Winter wrens, this is the only time you'll see them. So once again, like if you're going out in winter and you're saying, ooh, there's a list of birds that this is my one time of the year to see them. I'd like to see them here. They're these little shy birds, especially near wetlands on the ground. You'll see them. This would be your time to see them. I know a number of you participated in various sections of the Audubon Christmas bird count. Joyce, I saw some of the great pictures that you had taken. We had Orange County Audubon, we did it. And we could technically see these birds here all year round, but I never do. But in winter we do. So these are horned larks that we saw in the Black Dirt area in Pine Island. Just whole bunches of them. Once again, a great winter bird to see. And in the midst of them, a bird I had never noticed before is, you can see it even there, called a snow bunting. So the horned larks and the snow buntings were hanging out together. In summer, these are the northernmost songbirds. Like, so where do songbirds exist as far as being like in the Arctic Circle, the tip of Canada? These birds are farther north than any other species. But once again, they've flown south. We are there south. Like I know for a lot of our birds, south is Florida, but if you're in the Arctic, Orange County, New York is south. And so, this would be a time that you could see to see them. So just in summary, because obviously, I could, go on. But the main point is, I don't want to knock any part of the world or like I'm, loved all the places I've been. Like I love going out west. Out west is beautiful. But I'm sorry to say this, but after a while, I'm like, oh, is that all? Because I just don't see the diversity that I see here. The Caribbean, oh, it's beautiful. You get to go scuba diving. The Caribbean's great. But you're on an island and you're like, okay, I've seen that. I've been to Iceland. Others have gone to Iceland. Iceland is beautiful. But if you're going birding, you're like, okay, I'm done. But like here, it's like I've got my list. Like I haven't seen all my birds yet. Or like get to Iceland and no, you can see all the birds. Like it's just a shorter list there. We really live in a diverse area. There's just an amazing diversity. And winter is different. All right, so it's harder to see birds here. It's harder to see other wildlife, but they are still out there. All right, maybe you won't see as much, but nonetheless, a flock of snow geese, doing their thing. Just it is, it's a wonderful thing to see. And there are a whole bunch of Orange County birds that are only here in winter. All right, and so going out now, it's a special time of the year to go out. So I hope you get a chance to go out, or maybe you have a bird feeder. I regret I don't keep bird feeders. I probably should in winter, but like we have bears, and I've had bears wreck too many bird feeders. But if you have a bird feeder, here you can sit in the warmth of your house, have a coffee, and get to see a lot of these. And if you wanted to, like I said, there are all of these organizations. I know that MEEC, the Mamakating Environmental Agent. Oh, right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I always forget.
Well, that's why you're supposed to feed birds in the summer, especially the bears.
No, you're absolutely right. But I've said, oh, it's too cold for bears. Bears won't come out, and I've made mistakes on that end. But if you were to go to websites of some of these organizations, and we have the handouts from the Mearns Bird Club here, you could say, oh, there's presentations which are going to be given. There
Okay.
are hikes that you could go on. Maybe not as many, all right, but there are events coming up at the Bashakil. One of the things that the Bashakil does a lot of is hopefully at the Eagle's Nest. Last year, there were 3 Eagle's Nests that started the year, but then eagles are territorial, and 3 nests within the same line of sight. That's a problem. So the eagles went after each other, and then at the end of it, there was only 1 eagle's nest with any eaglets in it, and so last year was a disappointing year as far as the number of eaglets. So hopefully this year's a little bit better. One last thing on eagles, because we will have a talk just on eagles coming up. It's hard to see eagles because they fish and a lot of the water is frozen. But if you can find an area that isn't frozen, you can find a lot of eagles. So if you go to the Delaware River, where the Lackawaxen Stream comes in, if you go to the Rio Dam, there's a place on the Hudson, they're not frozen. And not only do you see eagles, you see lots of them, because that's one of the few places that they can find open water. So once again, maybe not your best eagle viewing, but if you want to be guaranteed to see an eagle and you go to one of these spots, you may say, yeah, I saw 5 eagles all like from my car in one spot. Winter offers different birding experiences that you might like. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. And we will continue. I should know this. Tell you what, I really should know this. Next week is an improvement. Yeah. So next week, as we try to look at all of the wildlife we can find in Orange County, we're going to do 2 weeks of invertebrates. Invertebrates are the most numerous animals on the planet in terms of just biomass, in terms of number of species. In fact, if you were to take all of the species of life on Earth,
We're gonna do another
more than
lecture.
half are made up of just the moths, the wasps, the flies, and the beetles. Those 4 groups of insects have more species than all other life combined. So invertebrates deserve some commentary, especially since they're parts of the food chains of all of these other things. So we'll do invertebrates in 2 weeks. So we'll do everything from the first animals up through mollusks next week, and we'll probably do arthropods and insects the week after that. Then we'll go into fish, amphibians, and then we'll get into birds and bald eagle nesting right around the time that hopefully there's some eagle programs at the Bashakil and some chances
Well,
to
there'll be
view them.
field trips. I don't know if there'll be another lecture like this.
So there will be lectures every week, but not on winter wildlife. This was the one shot for here, but the schedule is up for the remainder of the year. And if anyone would like to email me, I'm at walterjan@sunyorange.edu. I'd be happy to send you a lecture series. There are those here. If you haven't gotten a calendar and would like to for a donation, you could take a calendar for Audubon or Bashakil. Thank you so very much for coming, and we'll see you next week, or we'll see you when we see. Yes.
Well, very interesting.
All this winter wildlife.
Yeah, we could have gone to the college to see.
Yeah.
I would want to drive all the way there.
Comment on the white-tailed deer. Because I tell people, and
Uh-huh.
I've had, as an alderman in Middletown, I've had a few seminars.
Well, this gives you an idea how some of the others get folded.
Go ahead.
Where people have questions about what can I do about the deer. We've had DEC here to tell us about culling programs and birth control programs and that. But I remember growing up, and I use the state hospital as an example, where there were flower beds everywhere, the hillsides were flowers.
Mhm.
You couldn't do a single one of those now, because
Mhm.
you never had deer in Middletown. So do you have a quick comment on the migration from the woods to the city?
I don't. And the joke is where I live. We were just talking, and he said, "Shh, hear that? Someone in Hemlock just hit a deer." So we have lots of deer. And so I apologize. I don't have words of wisdom on that. Certainly the culling programs and all this would certainly have an effect. Certainly the warmth of the winters would have an effect too, because Canada geese didn't used to winter here. All right, it was very rare that you'd say, and now, but they can make a living here. The winters just don't get as cold. They can find places. And I'm sure the deer are responding to some of the same.
But they talked about the culling programs as shooting or taking care of the deer when they come in from the woods into town, and we said, are you kidding?
Yeah,
You know, there's 20 generations born in the city, so.
yeah.
But it's not just that they're coming into little towns in the woods. 50 years ago, there were no deer in the woods. The population was much lower. I mean, I used to have hostas growing all the way out to the woods in my garden. But now, you know, I mean, I have fences. And the deer population has increased everywhere, not just in Middletown. It's true, we do have a lot on Randall Heights.
I used to live in Yonkers, in my yard.
Mhm.
Constant.
Mhm.
It's the middle of the city.
Mhm.
That's a big city.
Mhm. Yeah, so I apologize, no great insights other than the ones I'm sure you have as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Any questions at home? Hi, Nancy, how are you?
Where donations go.
Oh, either one of the buckets is great. And feel free to take a calendar or two.
Thanks, Walt.
Thank you.
This was a eagle we had in the backyard. That's my lawn,
Uh-huh.
hayfield, and then it's a good sized eagle. Strange thing is, it showed up about 10 o'clock in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
day of President Carter's
Oh, interesting.
funeral.
Huh.
12:15.
Interesting.
Wings start flapping and takes off. It was there for like 2 hours, and I'm watching this thing. It's
Huh.
like, okay.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, there you go.
Coincidence? And the other thing is, if I can find them. Years ago. Yeah.
When the snow geese are around, they come right by our house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're beautiful. I regret that I haven't seen them yet this year. Maybe we'll see them tomorrow.
2017, January,
Oh, wow, that's beautiful.
and it's all soybean stubble.
Mm-hmm.
So they just come in. And,
Sure, sure.
you
Mhm.
know,
Oh, it's a great habitat for them, sure.
and when they came in, they lasted for a few days,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was like gone.
Mhm.
If there was one, there was thousands.
Mhm.
If there was none, there was none.
Mhm.
Good old days.
Good old days. For
Say
sure.
thank you and apologize for.
Oh,
coming.
no, no.
I had no
Oh, thank you.
idea where to park.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
I'll
coming.
be here next.
This was great.
Oh, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you liked it.
Name's Rich
Rich.
Bagel.
Whoa,
Good to meet you.
nice to meet you, Rich.
It's the best thing that's happened to me in a while,
Oh,
honestly.
good.
But here's a good one for
Sure,
you.
sure.
There are more crows in Portland than on the University of Portland campus
Oh, interesting.
than students.
Uh-huh. Oh, then
Than
students. Okay,
There are more
okay.
It's unbelievable.
Uh-huh.
I just got back. My daughter lives out there.
Uh-huh.
I just got back, but that's just nobody can explain it.
Wow.
But I mean, thousands.
We used to get them on this campus and they would try to scare them off with like the alarm
Yeah.
sounds. But,
Guns and
yeah.
those cannons. Where's the thing tomorrow?
the Liberty Loop. And if you want, there is the Orange County Audubon Society has a website
Okay.
with field trips with maps. So though, like, then you could say, oh, so the upcoming field trip. So if you were to look here, like, oh, there you go, Liberty Loop.
Okay, that's tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And I try to do, once the weather gets like, so come March, I'll try to do 2 walks a month. And then there are other leaders of hikes who give walks.
Where is
hikes.
Liberty Loop?
It is right at the Jersey border. So Unionville, if you know where that is,
Okay.
just at next to Unionville.
I'm in Monroe, so it's not
Okay.
that far.
Great, wonderful.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
It's actually on Google Maps. I was with.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Yeah.
You can find anything these days.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for it.
Thanks a lot.
I do. A lot of biology, from anatomy and physiology of nurses to prehistoric life to genetics to.
All right.
I don't know how much I still have. I've been trying to get rid of my teaching supplies for
Mhm.
years, and I have a lot of boxes that are not opened. Like
Oh,
for
okay.
kids to, I mean, I used to do presentations in school, so kids could break it open. Oh, you saw something nobody's ever seen before, you know. the things
Oh, no,
that-
that's a good
So
point.
I may still have a lot of those. Would you have any use for that?
I would be interested, a gentleman upstairs, Anthony Sorcelli teaches geology, so
Okay.
I'm sure.
All right, and they're not like fine fossils, they're just things like road cuts, you know,
Mhm.
scoop up some rocks, but I know they're shales, there's no fossils.
Oh, sure. bring it
Okay,
in.
great, I will bring a couple samples next time and tell me if this is.
Thank you so very much.
I just had a question.
Sure.
You've been following the Pennsylvania studies on spotted lantern flies and how they're sort of, they consider they might be becoming a new food source for birds.
I've heard some things. I don't know if I'm hearing the latest.
Yeah, no, I just was curious because everybody was flipping out, you know, smash them, do this
Yeah.
and that and the other, and yet birds are starting to find them now.
Mhm.
2 years ago, we were covered. I live in Monroe on Walton Lake.
Uh-huh.
We were covered with them one day and they were landing, they were just dive bombing into the lake and the fish were ignoring them. Birds, and then this year there was like none.
Done, yeah.
And we did a little scraping of the eggs and stuff. and-
Right,
but
yeah.
I didn't think I got them all, but there were none this year. I
Mhm.
saw 2.
Did you know
How much are the
Danielle?
calories?
Whatever you
yeah.
would like to donate, you
I
can take.
lived in Osseo Park. Do you know them?
I used to. be
Okay,
a
that's great.
soccer girl
Perfect.
with Alex
Okay.
years ago.
You know,
Enjoy.
Danielle, what is the relationship? Janet?
seen anything.
That next
Mhm.
door to her?
No, that's.
Well, thanks for coming
I
once
thought
again.
that-
Okay, thank you.
No, there was a relationship.
And I apologize as always. In
But-
15 minutes, I am in Slate
They
Hill
bought the
swinging a
house from
sword in a
Fremont,
martial
so
arts class, so
Yes.
I have to run.
The people that, well, they moved out.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
they-
To her.
Yeah, you mentioned.
So the woman next door.
It's great. I'm really
Sons.
happy.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
Well, they did. They put that.
Hey, it was great to see you. Oh, and thanks for, that's a lot of
My wife-
bluebirds. Thank you.